Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, Meseches CHULLIN Daf Kuf Lamed Zayin. We begin on the second line off the top. Reishis Hagez. Okay, so the mitzvah, special mitzvah to grant a portion of your first sharings to the Kayin. That applies only to sheep. Reishis Hagez, Einoi Noyeg Ela B'Rechelim. Only sheep as opposed to goats, as opposed to a cow. Minahan Emili, how do we know that it's limited to sheep? Amar Rav Chisda. It is learned by way of a Gzeiro Shava Asya. We learn through Giza. It says Gez Tzoincha Titanloi. So we have the term Gez, Giza, over here. We have the term Giza elsewhere. Right? Ksiv Hacha, over here it says Reishis Gez Tzoincha, you give to the Kain Titanloi. Ksiv Hasam, elsewhere we have a pasuk in Eiv. Umi Gez Kavasa Yischamam. He will warm himself via the shearings of his sheep, right, the wool. And we make a connection. Mala halan, just like over there. The term gaze, shearing, pertains to kvasim only, to sheep. Afkan kvasim here as well. Gaze is limited to kvasim. Asks the Gemara, why are you making this connection? From here to Eiv, to limit it to sheep, we could make the same type of Gzeiro Shava using the same type of word, and connect it to Bechayr, where we find the term Giza relates even to a bull, to a shayr. V'nei of Giza Giza me Bechayr, the son of a rice, le'savad b'Bechayr sharecha. One might not put his Bechayr to work, le'savad b'Bechayr sharecha, right? So this firstborn bull is kadosh, you can't put it to work, nor should you shear le'sagais b'Bechayr tzanecha, you shouldn't shear the firstborn tzayin, a light animal. Now what about crossover? Could you work a light animal? Could you share a bull if it's a bechor? How do we know to apply the halacha said by the bull, not to work with it to the lighter animal, and vice versa? Nor should you share the bull. So how do we know that these things cross over, that we apply the Isra Avodah to the Tzayin, Isra Giza to the Shar, Talmud Lemar? There's a connector in the pasuk. Evav. Loisavid, Viloi Sagais. Hence we know that both prohibitions apply to both classes of animals. In any case, clearly the Torah relates the term gaze, Loisagais, to a Shar. Right? So apparently Giza is not limited to sheep. Says the Gemara, you're right. Amakro. We have a different pasuk which teaches that Reishis Hagez is limited to sheep, to wool, which can be used to produce a personal garment. Amakro, the pasuk says, Reishis Gez Tzoinecha Titan Lo, you granted to the Kohen for his personal bodily use, for a garment. Well, saka, as opposed to bull's hair, which is only suitable for sack making. It's not for personal use. Elamiyat, if that's the criterion, it has to have garment potential. Then what about goat's hair, which are used in garment manufacturing? The answer is no. There's another issue there. It's not called gaze. Gaze relates to a shearing, cutting process, which entails a tool as opposed to goat's hair, which is merely plucked manually. It does not conform to the term gaze. But we require giza, a shearing. Valeka, you don't have to buy a goat. So hence we know sheep are in, but goats are out, and likewise bulls. Says the Gemara, Man shamas lehasvara. Who's the shita? Who's the opinion? who insists on, precise application of the term. So gaze means literally giza, not plucking. Who takes that approach? Rabbi Yossi, right? Rabbi Yossi is the one who says, well, Hamaydi Rabbi Yossi mididurchei. We'll find later, Rabbi Yossi agrees that if this happens to be, the term is relative to the particular product at hand. If this, in fact, is the proper mode of shearing it, right? A goat's hair is plucked, and that's called gaze, relative to the goat. By a sheep, it's done with a machine, with scissors. By a goat, it's done by hand. So that qualifies as gaze. It's a relative term, right? Rabbi Yossi agrees if this is the proper method. Ella. So back to the question: why are we excluding goat's hair from Reshus HaGeis? Kedamar Shimon Levi, as he tells us tomorrow, regarding the amount that you give to the kohen, it has to be enough that can be processed into a belt, which is one of the begadim that a kohen wears when he serves Hashem. Lamed l'sharis, which is the pasuk which is stated right after the mitzvah of Reshus HaGeis. It's meant to serve him that purpose. Davar haroi l'sheirus, give him something which is suitable for service in the Beis Hamikdash. Hanami as well, regarding determining what type of material is obligated, it needs to be something which can potentially be applied for wearing, for serving in the Beis Hamikdash, meaning wool. Hachanami davar haroi l'sheirus. Okay, so that slams the lid on that. It has to be wool only. Okay, so then why do we need that zero shava? At this point, it seems unnecessary. Elo giza l'mayasa. For divin halachah, tanu rishmoel, even within the sheep family, it needs to be sheep with soft, cushy wool. He says, kvasim shetzimron kasha. You have certain abnormal sheep whose wool is rigid, is firm. It's not really warming and soft. Peturim Reshus HaGeis, it's going to be exempt. Shnamar u'megeiz kvasa yischamam. That's why we need that connection to Eiv. It needs to be shearings of a sheep which have the ability to warm, and only something which is soft because of its insulative, properties. Because it has sort of layers. It's sort of that qualifies it. It also takes on the shape of the person, as opposed to something which is stiff and rigid, which doesn't have the warming ability as much, and therefore it is excluded. Okay, so at this point we know which material is included: sheep material, wool, and it needs to be soft and warming, as opposed to goat's hair, bull's hair. Those are out. What about if it's hand plucked? So if that's the accepted mode of harvesting, yeah, but otherwise, according to Rabbi Yossi, it doesn't qualify. Here comes that discussion. Tani Chad. Okay, so one brisa it says, "Goiz is a seizim v'shoytev is rechilim potter." If one shears, right, uses a scissor and shears the goats, that's out, because those are excluded from the Reshus HaGeis, right? It's not wool. But the second point, v'shoytev is a rechilim. He washes off he bathes his sheep. And during the bathing process, we have some wool that, sort of drops. Potter, it's exempt from Reshus HaGeis, because that wool, that merely shed from the sheep during the washing process, was not harvested properly, it wasn't shorn. And that's required according to Rabbi Yossi. But we have another brisa which says that's okay. We have another brisa. Goiz is in potter. Okay, so goat's hair is out. But v'shoytev is a rechelim. These fibers that shed during the bathing process of sheep are chayev and Reshus HaGeis. The answer is like kasha. Harabbanon, or Rabbi Yossi. First brisa is Rabbi Yossi. It has to be done conventionally, as opposed to just shedding during the. According to Rabbanon, any sort of removal qualifies. Where do we find Rabbi Yossi's opinion, who insists on following the, precisely the literal term? Gaze means to shear, and ketzircha and the fire means to cut, right? Where is that Rabbi Yossi? The Sanya leket ketzircha. V'loy leket kituf. So the droppings, the stalks that drop during the tzircha when you cut with a sickle, yeah, that belongs to the poor. But if you're plucking it out manually, if something drops at that point, doesn't qualify for leket. Rabbi Yossi Omer, yeah, ein leket ela haba machams kotzer. In fact, leket is only if it derived from a proper cutting. Rabbi Yossi Tanakama, Rabbi Yossi seems to be just repeating Tanakama. What's the, Kula Rabbi Yossi, the whole Bryce is Rabbi Yossi speaking. It's all one track. The Bryce means like this. A stalk that drops during the plucking process doesn't qualify for leket. Why? Sheh Rabbi Yossi, because Rabbi Yossi is of the opinion that ain't leket el b'machmas kotzer. Leket is only leket ketzercha. It was cut, not if it was plucked. But you should know, so we referenced this before. If Rabbi Yossi insists on following the precise description of the literal term of the pasuk, but if it's something normal, something conventional, so if this is the regular method, proper mode of harvesting, even if it wasn't done with a tool, with a sickle, it qualifies as sani of a brisa. Rabbi Yossi no kotzer. The literal word kotzer means a little kotzer. Only if it was cut. What about oiker minayin? Let's say some beans are actually plucked out with their roots. Tamlai liktzer, and the pasuk is covering that process as well. What about toilish minayin? And sometimes some beans they're just plucked without the roots. Again, it's a different type of cutting. It's not a regular conventional cut. It's a hand pluck, pick. Okay, but if this is the way it's done, they added the lashon, covers this form of harvesting as well. But for instance, regarding grain, the proper way is to cut it with a sickle, and only that qualifies. I want to support this theory as well from a Mishnah. We have a Mishnah where Rabbi Yossi clearly includes all these forms of harvesting if it is considered the accepted method of doing so. We have a Mishnah. Malbenois, these are the squares, like the patches of bitzolim of onions, which of course are plucked out manually. And that situation should be between different vegetables. So you have separate rectangles of onions. Are they considered separate fields, so to speak, and each one earns its own payah? Each one has to have its own payah on the corner for the poor? Or is it all considered one entity? Rabbi Yossi, each one is a separate entity, requires its own payah. But clearly you see from Rabbi Yossi now, even onions which are not cut, they're plucked, are included in the mitzvahs of matanis kahuna, of the matanis leket shikon payah, in support and confirmation of our theory. They disagree regarding considering them to be separate entities. It says it's really all one thing. It's all one onion factory, even though it looks like it's separate into separate sections. Okay. At this point, we know what material qualifies for Reish Zagez. Soft sheep material. Now, how many animals have to be shorn to trigger this obligation? So in the Mishnah we had Beis Shammai, 2 sheep, Beis Hillel, 5. What are the sources for each respective opinion? Mishnah Beis Shammai Tarti, Nami Krutzoin. So Beis Shammai came from a pasuk where the pasuk called even 2 sheep as sign. Yechaye ish eglas bokor shteit sign. Right, the pasuk in Yeshaya. Beis Hillel came from a pasuk in Shmuel. Chamesh tzayin asuyos. Now the question is, fine, 5 also qualify for tzayin, but in Beis Shammai's pasuk it clearly indicates that even 2 qualify. So why do Beis Hillel negate that pasuk? Bishlam Beis Shammai tarti nami krutzayin. So according to Beis Shammai, we understand. They discovered a pasuk where even 2 is called tzayin. Elo Beis Hillel, my time, but why do Beis Hillel veer away from that pasuk? Amar Avgan, Amakro. Because Beis Hillel's pasuk indicates that only 5 trigger the chiv of Reish Zagez. It says Chamesh Tzayin Asuy. What does Asuyos mean? They generate, they manufacture, they activate 2 mitzvahs, which only happen when there are 5. Shoyis Asuyos means Shoyis Shtei mitzvahs. What are the 2? Reish Zagez, Umatanis. Matanis means Israel L'chayayim. Ask the Gemara, it's Reish Zagez and Matanis, which supports your theory that it's only 5. Ema B'chayr Matanis, perhaps the two mitzvahs that are triggered when you get to number 5, it's b'chor and matanis. Well, no, b'chor echad milim b'chayva. For a b'chor, even one qualifies. The firstborn is a b'chor, you don't need 5. But according to your argument, the matanis chad milim b'chayva, what about matanis? It's not conditioned upon 5. Even one animal that's shechted triggers the chiva of matanis. So we veer away from this pshat. Elam Rav Ashi. Chamesh Tzoyin Asuyas teaches us Shema Asuyas is Ba'alein. It's not Asuyas meaning 2. No, it triggers one, it activates one new mitzvah. It introduces a new mitzvah into the scene. Shema Asuyas is Ba'alein. It gets the owners to do. It's like Gadol HaMa'asa, right? You recruit a donor for tzedakah. So it recruits its owner. V'Emerslein sort of tells him, get going. Kumasei mitzvah, there's a new mitzvah. Fresh new mitzvah today. Come. We're 5. We're good for Reis HaGeis. So that's how we know. The Reis HaGeis is dependent upon 5. At this point we have 2 opinions. Beis Shammai is 2. Beis Hillel 5. Here comes the third opinion. Tanya. The Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yosi. Oimer. Mishum Aviv. So Rabbi Yosi is the one who's being sourced here. He says Arba. It's 4. They qualify as tzoyin shenemar. Oh, the got it, right? He stole the animal, and he pays back 4. V'arba tzoyin tachas haseh. So we see the term tzoyin relating to 4. And Rebbe accepted this position. Tanya, my Rebbe says, this came from a great man, Rabbi Yosi, an outstanding scholar. Ilmalai. Even if it were so that divrei hen, that their positions, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel's positions, were divrei Torah based on Torah. Rashi explains the term Torah means like it's instructions for all generations. Torah, Hirah, right? As opposed to concepts that we find in Navi and Nevi'im and Ksuvim, they're called Kabbalah. Because Shekibul Meruach HaKodesh, Kol Nevuah Nevuah L'Vitzorach HaSho'ah V'Hadar V'Hamas. This is primarily the items found in the Nach are for sort of the time being. It was meant for local, conditions, local circumstances, local events, instructions from Hashem to deal with local. So that's why it's called Kabbalah. It was a Kabbalah for the, for the circumstance at hand, as opposed to Torah, which is sort of permanently in place for all generations. Okay, in any case, just to understand the terms, the Divrei Torah, even if it were so that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel were based on a pasuk in Chumash, which of course stands higher than Nach, but Divrei Beribi, and the words of Beribi, the great Beribi Rabbi Yosi, were only from Nach, Kabbalah, I would still side with him. Anan Divrei Beribi Shemin. I'll go with that. V'koshken is certainly in our situation where he is coming from a pasuk in Shemais, and they're only coming from Nach. V'koshken shedivrei Divrei Kabbalah, and he V'divrei Beribi is Divrei Torah. Now, why would he adopt Rabbi Yosi over the Gemara is assuming because it's sort of a compromised position. Here we have 2, here we have 5, 4, somewhere in the middle. However, it doesn't really qualify as a compromise. V'amar, we learned, Einachra Shalishis Machras, a third opinion, a third entity is not considered a compromise. A compromise would be, suppose one party says, black and white is in. Other one says black and white is out. Comes a third party and says, black is in, white is out. So he's sort of related to their factors and he's drawing a compromise. But here, it's a totally new entity, totally new number. They're saying 2. They're saying 5. And he comes up with a brand new number, which is 4, which is not 2 or not 5. In monetary issues, 4 is a compromise between 2 and 5, right? Because in 5 you have 2, it's all about money, it's the same commodities, so somewhere in the middle is considered but here it's a brand new concept. 2 animals trigger, 5 animals trigger. No, he says 4 animals trigger. So why would he prefer his opinion over the others? You know why? It turns out because it was sourced. Listen to this. It was sourced from the great Nevi'im. He related it not from his own investigation. It was based on the halacha that he was makabel, that he was handed down. Amra b'chagai zechari malachi, the great Nevi'im, who was the last Nevi'im, incidentally. So that's where it came from, and that's why Rebbe adopted that position. Okay, so we know how many are required to trigger the chiyuv? 2, 5, and according to Rebbe, the conclusion is 4. Now, how much sharing, how much wool do you need to have to get the chiyuv going? So we have machlekes in the Mishnah. He says a very large amount. You need 5, and each one should produce a mana upras. A mana is 25 sela and a half of a mana, so it's 37 and a half sela. It's a weight, a certain amount of pounds, times 5, right? So 1 per each. Whereas the Chachamim say kol shein. You don't need that much, even a little bit. Now, how much is kol shein? Just a strand? Unlikely. You have to give the kohen something from it. Become a kol shein. So we have a big machlokes. Again, we're talking about the minimum amount or weight requirement. How much wool do you need to trigger the mitzvah? Become a kol shein. Amar Rav mana pras. Of all 5, you have to have produced a mana pras, which is 37 and a half sela. It's provided that it's split evenly amongst all 5. So each one has to have an even fifth of this. So the 37 and a half sela have to be evenly distributed amongst the 5. With Shmuel Amar Shishim, he says 60 sela, which is way more than 37 and a half. With Noisein Selechs L'Kain, you give a 60th, which is a significant portion of the total, a 60th. Or less than a 60th is sort of nullified by the bottom of Shishim. So 1/60th is the minimum amount to still have presence, to still be considered, reckoned with in the bigger picture. V'noisen sela achas l'kohen. Rabbi Chana Omar, Rabbi Yochanan quotes Rabbi Yochanan to say sheish. As long as you have 6 sela worth of wool, it activates the chiyuv. L'kohen chamisha ve'echad loy, but it has to give the kohen 5 of 6. It has to be something significant, something of substance, like the Mishnah says. And even though he's only left with 1, poor fellow, okay, but that's the chiyuv. Ulam Rabbi Elazar says, no, why 6 or 60 or kol shein shaninu? The Mishnah says even a drop. Rashi says even a sela worth. It seems from Rashi it doesn't mean literally a drop, but he has to have enough to give the but it's something, even a sela worth. Okay, so how much wool is required to trigger the mitzvah? According to B'nai Ben Harknas, a huge amount. 37 and a half sela times 5. According to Rabbanim, who say kol shein, we have 3 opinions. Either it means kol shein, even a little bit, or according to Rav, 37 and a half sela, according to Shmuel, 60 sela. Tanan, let's move back to the Mishnah. How much do you give the kohen? What's the portion that goes to the kohen? 5 sela worth. Mishkal Chamish Lam Yehuda. In Yehuda, the selas were bigger, so it was 5, which ended up being 10 in Galil, because they had smaller coins. Shenas Islam Begalil. So you have to give him at least 5 worth. According to Rav Rabbi Yochanan, it works. Because, so you have to give this much. Elul Shmuel, Rabbi Elazar Kasha, according to Shmuel, who says, clearly says you only give 1 sela, and certainly according to Elazar, the whole starting point is just a drop. You only have a drop to begin with. Kashi, how are you going to give him 5? Well, according to your question, why is it any better according to Rav? Rav and Shmuel, the Amr Tabei, they both told us, Reishis Hageiz B'Shishim. You give the kohen 1/60th of the total quantity. Okay, and according to Rav, what's the starting point? 37 and a half sela. 60th of that is barely a half. A sela, it's certainly not 5. So how does this work? The answer is like this. So we have to reevaluate the Mishnah. We understand the Mishnah's message. It's not like you have to give him 5 under all circumstances. The Mishnah is talking about a fellow who's loaded up with tons of sheep, tons of wool. He has plenty to go around. Issue is he has a truckload of sheep, of wool. He has a trainload of kayanim, chatanim and cousins. How much is he going to give each person? Comes the Mishnah and says, you have to make sure that each fellow gets a substantial amount, a respectable amount, chamish to make himself something. That's the point. But if the starting point is a small amount he only has a small amount of wool, certainly we take Rabbi Shmuel's formula, which is you're not obligated more than the 60th. There's no set prescribed amount how much you give. It's relative to the total quantity, right? We have an explanation on that Mishnah. Rav Shmuel, they will explain to us what's going on. Talking about an owner who has lots of gizin, lots of wool, and he wants to distribute it. How much does he give per coin? We instruct him as follows. Give each fellow something useful. Each coin, don't give him less than 5 sel. Okay, Gufa. But in terms of the actual obligation, it's a 60th, merely a 60th. Gufa, right, as we learned. Rabbi Shmuel, they will explain to us. Reish Hagez b'shishim. Reish Hagez is giving a 60th. Where else do we have the 60th formula? Truma b'shishim. A 60th of your crop is truma. Peya b'shishim. A 60th of your field is peya. Ask the Gemara, what's going on? Truma b'shishim. A 60th is truma. V'anatnam, I have a Mishnah. Yeah, it's for a stingy person, but for a regular person, certainly a generous person, it's way more than a 60th. It's not true buying a generous fellow, good eye, give one 40th. So why are we sufficing with 1/60th? Says the Gemara, deraisa b'shishim. Minat Torah, a 60th is enough. To Rabbanan b'arba'im. Rabbanan upped it to a 40th. Okay, so Rabbi Shmuel spoke about the basic chiyuv minat Torah. Rashi brings a pasuk in Echeskel where we have a remez, that is a 60th. Ask the Gemara, hold it, the Raisa b'shishim minat Torah, you need to give a 60th, even one kernel suffices. Shmuel himself tells us, chita achas, one kernel, but there's a kri, grabs the entire granary. You're right, the Raisa the Shmuel, technically minat Torah, one kernel is enough, like Shmuel. The Rabbanan, b'daraisa echad marboim, however the Rabbanan, regarding material like grain, which is chayiv and truma minat Torah, they applied the shear of 1/40th for a generous fellow. To Rabbanan b'shishim. Suppose it's material which is not chayiv minat Torah. Minat Torah it's only grain and grapes and olives, but apples only chayiv and truma. To Rabbanan, they were not so strict. Even a generous fellow can revert to the stingy formula, which is 60th. Hence, Rav Shmuel cited the number 60th because it applies to ordinary materials. Next question. Peya b'shishim. A 60th of the field is meant to be peya. V'tanan, we have a Mishnah which we will say every morning. There's no prescribed amount. There's no shear. The following items have no prescribed amount. Inland shear. Hapeya, right? Bikurim or which is the carbon that you bring when you come to Beis Hamikdash on Yom Tov. So how could you say peya requires a 60th? The Rai saying no shear. You're right, man. I told you there's no shear. The Rabbanan b'shishim. Rabbanan enacted a shear of shish. Again, what's the point? It's already a Mishnah. Tani have a Mishnah that is a 60th from Rabbanan. A person will pay b'shishim. You know, and to give less than a 60th by peya. Aval b'shamar peya and shear. Even though the previous Mishnah said it has no shear, the Torah has no shear. The Rabbanan the 60th. So what's Shmuel coming to add to the Mishnah? Hasan ba'aretz. The Mishnah is speaking at Yisrael, but I wouldn't know about chutzlart. Let's say in Syria it was chayiv in the Rabbanan. Hacha b'chutzlart. Rabbi Shmuel coming to add. Even pay on chutzlart still needs to be a 60th, similar to Eretz Yisrael. Here comes a story. Ki salak Isi Barini. When Isi Barini traveled up to Eretz Yisrael, who did he meet up with? Ashkechei Rabbi Yechon. Rabbi Yechon notices him sitting and learning with his son. Mekai mitzvah d'oraisa. No, I went to Rav Chaim Kanievsky in Bnei Brak. My son, he says, when the tata vet lernen mit the zun vet erkennen. He says, when the father will learn with his son, if I learn with my son, he'll know. And then he added, it's a mitzvah d'oraisa. It's a mitzvah not Torah. You know, you send your kid to yeshiva. Very nice, but doesn't absolve you from your chiyuv. That's primarily the way a child is meant to learn, to absorb, to internalize Torah through his father. The father will learn with his son, he'll know. So he's sitting learning with his son. The kamas le'lebre, he was learning the halachas, a very sagez. And he said over the lashon of the Mishnah, right? The kamas le'lebre, rechelim, sheep's wool. Now rechelim is the male orientation, lashon zocher. And according to his understanding, the lashon rechelim covers both genders of sheep. Amar Lacy says, but the Mishnah, we have the Mishnah rechelois, asnai rechelois. Why don't you teach him the way we have it in the Mishnah rechelois? That's the way the Chachamim related to this species. Amar Lacy says, well, I'm going with the pasuk, Parshas Vayishlach, right? Yaakov Avinu sent to Esav rechelim asai rechelim. Amalei, he says that's the way the Torah calls it. But in Torah Shabbal Peh, it's related to differently. Amalei lashon Torah la'atzma, lashon chachamim la'atzma. The Chumash has its way of expressing itself. The Chachamim in Torah Shabbal Peh have their way of expressing themselves. Interesting. The Chassam Sefer says why. So why doesn't the Mishnah, in fact, use Rechei Lois? He says to hint to us that the source of the number, right, 2 and 5, is from the Psukim and Divrei Kabbalah, right, V'imem Ksuvim, as opposed to the share of 4, which is from Rabbi Yossi, based on the pasuk in the Torah. So that's why the Mishnah specifically used Rechei Lois, which is Lashon Chachamim, to indicate that the numbers are based on Psukim and Divrei Kabbalah, not the original pasuk in the Torah per se, but in the Divrei Kabbalah, which is a lower level, similar to Divrei Chachamim of Torah Shabbal Peh. Interesting. Okay, so he set him straight on that. Amalei, he continued his interview. He says, what's going on? Tell me some good news. What's going on in Bavel? Amalei, Man Reish Sidra, who's the head of the yeshiva? Who's the big rabbi in Bavel? Amalei, he says, Rav, right? His name was Abba. So instead of calling him Rav, Rabbeinu, in a respectful way, he called him by his name. Amalei, Abba Aricha, the long Abba. He's very tall. Amalei, he says, that's how you call him? Let me set you straight. Let me tell you who you're talking about. It's a great man. Beyond our understanding. Amalei, Abba Aricha, currently calling him Abba Aricha. Let me have a word with you. Dachirna, I'll tell you, I recall. Way back, when we were younger, how great he was. Kadavi Yasivna, Achar Yudzayin Shurim. When we were sitting in the yeshiva in front of Rebbe was the teacher at that point, I was 17 rows behind. I was in the bleachers. Achere the Rav came behind Rav, who was sitting right in front of Rebbe. And you know what was going on between Rav and Rebbe? Fireworks going back and forth. The Torah was fire. V'nafki zikukin denur, these spits of fire. These bullets of fire where flames were just shooting. We put me the Rav. We put me the Rebbe, from Rav's mouth to Rebbe, and back. And we put me the Rebbe, put me the Rav. And I had no clue. It was way over my head. Less on the other my number. I had no clue what they were talking about. That's the man you were talking. And you call him Abba Aricha, Vat Amras, Vat Abba Aricha, currently calling him Abba Aricha? Okay. So he set him straight. Amalei, so now was Isi Barhini's turn to ask Rabbi Yechon. He says, Amalei, learning Reish Agez with my son, could you clarify for me, please? Amalei, Reish Agez Bakama, how many sheep need to be shorn to trigger, to activate the chiv of Reish Agez? How much wool has to be shorn? What's the quantity? Amalei, so really he's coming from the Mishnah where the Rabbanan say kol shein, even a drop. Is that so? Amalei, so Rabbi Yechon says b'shishim. You need to have at least 60 pounds, 60 selah worth of wool to trigger. So he says, what do you mean? The Mishnah says kol shein, v'hanan b'chol shein tanan. Why 60? It says even a drop. Amalei Rabbi Yechon. Third time around, set him straight. He says, well, you're asking me, right? You must be asking me for a reason, right? So listen to me. Amalei Kain, if you're going to insist on just the literal wording of the Mishnah, then you didn't have to ask me. And came ma ben livelach. What's the difference between me and you? Meaning, I have that clarity in the Mishnah from my teachers, etc., that in fact that is the correct and proper meaning of the words of the Mishnah. It doesn't mean kol shein, literally a drop. It means relative to Reb Daisu, says a huge amount. So it's not that much. It's kol shein, but it doesn't mean literally a drop. It means at least 60, which is a substantial amount, qualifies as gaze, as a cropping of wool, which allows you to give a 60th to the kohen and still have, a quality gift. Rav Dimi came. He had a different presentation of the minimum requirement. He quotes Rav b'shishim, 60 selah worth. Rabbi Yechon quotes Rabbi Yanai that it's 6 selah worth. Amalei Rabbi Rav Dimi. So Rabbi turned to Rav Dimi. One up, one down. An cheslan chada. So one problem was solved. V'ak cheslan chada. And one problem was now generated. Meaning, bishleima to Rabbi Yechon kasha. You see, a minute ago we quoted. I'm going to go back up at the beginning of the Amid here. Rabbi Barachana quotes Rabbi Yechanan that the minimum amount is 6, right? And in the previous story between Rabbi Yechanan and Isi, he said 60. How do we resolve that? How did they hold the Rabbi? Rabbi Yechanan's personal opinion today is 60. Whereas Rabbi Yechanan, who said 6, that's in the name of his Rebbe, as you just presented, Rabbi Yechanan. So that resolves that issue. He holds 60, his Rebbe holds 6. Fine. Good. Thank you for that clarity. The Rav Kasha, but in Rav we have a open clash. Because according to your version of Rav, it's 60. And earlier on top of the Amr Rav Mano Pras, 1.5 mana, which Rashi says 37.5 Sela. So which one is it? The Rav Kasha that also can be resolved as follows. When he said mana and a half, he didn't mean the standard mana of 25 Sela, which gets you 37.5 in total. No, he meant a mana of 40 Sela, a jumbo mana. Like Kasha, my mana, the Kama, we spoke about a mana, he spoke about a supersized mana, which weighs 40 Sela. My mana de ka'amar ben arbaim slaim, in which case 1.5 is 60 sela. Tavalei b'shisha, which is a perfect fit to your quote of Rav that it's 60. We turn to the next page. Ask the Gemara, where do you find this jumbo-sized mana? V'tani tana mana arbaim slaim. There's a tana, there's a moira. They speak about this type of unusual mana and just call it a mana. Yeah, in Atani, we have a brisa regarding halachas of tuma. Chemes Chadash, you have a new leather pouch, which hadn't yet been properly, closed up and sewn together. It still has these holes. Even though it can hold pomegranate, so it's already useful. It's torah because it's not completed yet. But let's say tafra, fully sewed it together, closed it up, and then it tore. V'nikra. Once it attained the status of a kli, it doesn't lose it so quickly. Shiura can remind if it can still hold on to the pomegranate, it still retains its kli status. But if it slides out, then it's tahar. According to Tanakam, it's about pomegranates. No, it's about spools of wool. The hole has to be big enough to allow a spool of shesi, of horizontal string, and the loom is horizontal, there's vertical. So shesi is is a vertical, a thicker. Now, what size spool are we talking about? It could be small, it could be big. It means achas mi'arba b'mana shel ben arbaim slaim. Achas mi'arba, 1 out of 4, so it's a fourth of a mana. Okay, that's how big it is. That's how much it weighs. Ben arbaim slaim. Which type of mana? The one comprised of 40 sela, a jumbo mana. So clearly, he's relating to that type of mana. So this spool is 10, right? That's a fourth of the 40. In any case, it supports our shot. In fact, when Rav spoke about 1.5 mana, he didn't mean the standard, he meant the 40 sela mana, in which case 1.5 is 60, which fits with the number 60 cited further down in his name as well. Okay, so in conclusion, how much wool is required to trigger the chiva of Beis HaGeis? According to Beis Ibn Harkanas, 1.5 mana times 5. According to Rav, and according to Shmuel, it's 60 sela. According to Rabbi Yechanan's personal opinion, it's only 6. According to Rabbi Elazar, even a kolshein. How much do you give the kohen? According to Rabbi Shmuel, a 60th of the total amount. If you have enough to go around, make sure to give each kohen a substantial amount, useful amount, a minimum of 5 sela worth. Okay, all the best to you and Tzlacha.